Good evening. I'm Ellen Roberts. I'm your host for Senior Issues. Today we have a repeat guest, Elizabeth Thielen from Nicasa. It's nice to see you again. Why don't you introduce yourself for the folks who missed last year's show?
Sure.
Okay.
I'm Elizabeth Thielen. I've been with Nicasa Behavioral Health Services for about 18 years.
Oh.
I'm an addictions professional with over 20 years of experience, and I'm a licensed and professional counselor as well as a problem and compulsive gambling counselor.
I understand that March is Gambling Awareness Month, so this is good for all of us to know. I know when you were here the last time, I hadn't thought so much about gambling, but you had a lot of good points that we wanted to share again with our viewers.
Right. As a society, we're really well versed in substance addiction, alcoholism. We all kind of know about the risks there and how to get help, but there's not as much public awareness of problem gambling, and that's why every year in March, Problem Gambling Awareness Month occurs, and it's a great opportunity just to get the word out about the disorder as well as the help that's available.
Okay, because gambling, it's well, like a lot of the, it's not necessarily a problem. It's not bad, but it can get bad quickly. I understand.
Right. Yeah. Most people who gamble are able to do so without significant adverse consequences, but a small percentage will develop a problem, and for those people, that will become a serious problem for lots of different areas of their life and the people who care about them in their lives.
Okay. Yeah. It's expands to the whole family. It's not just one person's problem.
Right.
And what are the warning signs that that suddenly you've never gambled before and now you go out and it's too much fun?
Right. Well, and you think about it, if you asked a group of people what is responsible drinking or moderate drinking, a lot of people would actually give you the definition of binge drinking. So it's not something that people really understand, even with regards to drinking. So now you add
we all think we're not doing it in excess.
Right, because I drink socially. And so likewise, there can be some misconceptions about gambling. And so it's not something that's necessarily intuitive. So it is really important that if somebody does decide to gamble, that they learn, one, what are responsible gambling strategies, and two, what are kind of the signs and symptoms that something might have gone wrong. So some of those symptoms might be needing to increase your bets to feel the same, whether it's feel the same level of excitement or the same level of kind of peace or recreation, that whatever they get out of it. Another is that they might have a difficult time cutting back or quitting, or if they do cut back or quit, do they become restless or irritable?
Oh, okay.
Right.
So you wouldn't, it seems like I remember a story where Howard Hughes, they sat down the airplane and he went to some place somebody on the flight had a horse and he wanted to place a bet, and he only placed a $2 bet, and he said, well, that doesn't matter. It's $2, $200. It's the same. Emotionally for him, but for, like you said, a lot of people, $2 is fine to start with, but it creeps up to
it could be $20, then $200, then $2,000. People might also be very preoccupied with gambling, where they're really thinking about it a lot when they're not doing it, spending a lot of time trying to think about how to get money to gamble. They might be hiding the extent of their gambling from people who care about them. They might be finding that when they do gamble, it causes problems for them at work or at home. So there are a lot of different things that can occur that can tell you that this might have gone wrong. You have people who might chase losses. So this is important. So when you lose, that's time to walk away and not gamble again for a while. But when somebody's gambling in a disordered way, they kind of go back as soon as they can to try to win that back. And unfortunately, that usually means to more losses, and then they chase those losses, and it can kind of become an endless cycle. And then another sign would be somebody who's gambling to escape personal problems or emotional problems.
If I'm doing this, I'm not thinking about that.
Right. And that's just not really a healthy way to cope. So those are some of the signs that somebody could look for.
Yeah, and I suppose the sooner something in the back of your mind, you hit on one of these things, it's time to, say, oh, well, maybe I could find something else to do with my friends this week or whatever, because the casinos and everything, it's so fast to gamble. A friend of mine was talking about having you on the show, and she said, yeah, you know, years ago, if you did gamble, which she didn't, you had to pull the slot machine, and she said, now you can, you know, just keep hitting this button, and before you know it, you've, you know, gambled more. You couldn't possibly have done that. The strongest person in the world couldn't have pulled the slot that fast.
Right, right. So the rate of play is actually something that can kind of increase the addictive potential of a game. And so a lot of the games have changed over the years, as well as the accessibility. So if you think of all the different kinds of gambling, before maybe you had to go to the track or the casino, and those things still exist. And then you have off-track betting. And you have lottery, and the lottery can be available in grocery stores and you know, or convenience stores and gas stations, and then you've got video
automated
gaming
machines to get your lottery tickets from.
Not even in having to interact with another person. And so if you add in the online wagering, then there are a lot of opportunities to gamble that didn't used to be there.
And even the multi-state gambling. I mean, when the lottery in Illinois started, it was, I think, $2 million was the top, you know, thing that you could get. And so there's a lot more money, and we all play games with what would you do with this money or whatever. You know, just everybody did it. Everybody threw in a dime in, you know, the whole office, and every once in a while one of those comes to, you know, actually pays off. But the statistics are very low. I don't know what it is who wins the lottery, but it's, well, obviously the states and whoever's running it, the house always wins. Right.
The house always wins is an important, you know, concept to remember when you're doing any kind of gambling, and just assume that you're going to lose. So I talked about those responsible gambling strategies before. That's one of them. So assume you're going to lose, and then set a limit about how much you want to spend, and then stick to it, as well as time. So how long do you want to gamble for? So whether you're going to the casino, the track, or one of these video gaming places, you know, maybe say I want to go for an hour, and when that hour is up, I'm either ahead, I'm even, or I'm down, but I'm leaving. And so that's really important. Not chasing losses when they happen, because they will. And making sure that you are not gambling as a way to cope, and that you are definitely trying to avoid mixing alcohol with gambling, because those two things don't really go together all that well.
Yeah, it affects your thought process, you know.
That's right.
And especially now that you get these cards where you put money on the cards, you're not handing out quarters or dollar bills or anything. That of course, I don't know, I think the younger generation doesn't handle money. They always do cards. Maybe it'll be different. But still, you lose the concept of, you know, how much is this.
The tangible effect of what you are losing. And so there is research that shows the more disconnected you are from your actual money, the more likely you are to risk it. And so when you used to be, you know, handing out bills or putting coins in, there was a more, you know, more understanding of what you are actually wagering or risking. And when you're so far removed from it, you're more likely to risk more than you had really intended.
Now, are seniors or young people more susceptible to this? Or
actually, yeah, there are a number of people who are at increased risk, seniors being one of them. Adolescents and young adults are another group. And so one thing that's interesting is over time we have a lot more grandparents who are now the primary caregivers for their grandchildren. And so that's why it's important for seniors to also know that teens do gamble, and teens actually have a higher rate of problem gambling than the general population.
I suppose online and everything. They've got access that we didn't have. I mean, you know.
And they're very savvy. I mean, how many times have I had to ask a young person how to do something on my phone or with a remote?
The library has come ask a teen technology question section. And when I got my smartphone, I took the neighbor with me, so I got the same phone she had, because you know, I couldn't learn, but I want somebody who knows what they're doing to teach me.
Absolutely. So seniors, teens, and young adults, also military and veterans. And so those are some groups that are at risk. Athletes are also at increased risk.
Well, there are. You see young people who all of a sudden they've got phenomenal amounts of money, and they sign up and they can bet on sports other than their own. And you know, I would imagine, I'm never having been terribly athletic, but I can see that, you know, you're competitive.
Right.
If you're going to be a successful athlete, you have to be competitive.
Right, and that is one of the primary reasons that athletes are at increased risk. They have a highly competitive nature. They're also very used to winning. So we talked about not chasing losses. Well, an athlete, when they're losing, they don't quit. They just dig deeper. They try harder, and that is very, you know, adaptable if you're in a sports setting. It's not very adaptable if you're gambling. So again, if you're losing, that's time to call it quits.
Yeah, you think you've got this winning streak. You're more likely to make that basket or win the blackjack hand.
Right. Absolutely. And you think about, we talked about what do you do when you lose? Well, what do you do when you win? Again, that's something you should walk away. Be glad that you won because it's rare. But again, an athlete, when they win, they don't stop either. They're always looking ahead to the next game, the next prize. And so if somebody gambles like an athlete, they're going to be gambling in a way that's not all that healthy.
Okay. Yeah, that's a good point. Now, if someone, they have a Gamblers Anonymous, like alcoholics, would you connect somebody who has a problem or thinks they have a problem with something like that? Or do you run a meeting?
Well, that's really crucial. So there's kind of two different things. There's counseling and then there's support. And so we do provide the counseling, and I can talk a little bit about that, but we do connect people to support. A group like Gamblers Anonymous is run by recovering gamblers for people seeking recovery from gambling. And it's really crucial because it's very important to be understood and to be around people who've walked in your shoes and can kind of give you advice from a perspective that you can really relate to. And so those meetings are located throughout the Chicagoland area. We're very fortunate that there is a Gamblers Anonymous meeting that meets right out of our building at our Round Lake office. So our clients that come to us for counseling have the added benefit of an on-site Gamblers Anonymous meeting.
You already know where you're going for the meeting. Okay. Well, we're going to take a few minutes and give you a chance to catch a breath. And today we're going to talk about the coronavirus is the big thing in the world that we can't do too much about that, but we can follow the Center for Disease Control's suggestions to reduce getting sick, and these are the general suggestions for whether it's a cold, the flu, whatever. And I know you've been hearing all these, but I'm going to repeat them again. You know, it says they suggest you avoid contact with people who are sick, and that doesn't mean, you know, putting your relative in the back bedroom, locking the door, and, you know, it's not the Black Death, but it means you don't need to go over and sit next to them, or if you're sick or somebody thinks they're getting sick, you don't overly expose yourself to them. You know, they talk about saying 3 to 6 feet away unless you have to get close. So that just makes sense. And to avoid touching your eyes and nose, and I think I don't touch my eyes and nose, but at the end of the day, my glasses are covered in smudge prints, so I must touch them. So, you know, try to be careful of that so you don't grab a doorknob and then dose yourself with the guy who was just in there. If you're sick, you know, stay home. You don't need to go to church and contaminate everybody around you or the grocery store, but, you know, do what you can. Cover your mouth with, you know, grab that Kleenex, cough into it, and then throw the Kleenex out. They say don't keep, you know, carrying all those germs around with you, spreading them through the house because, you know, you don't want to use a second Kleenex. You know, most of us can find some reasonably priced Kleenex and use those. Washing your hands, you know, there was a great little Facebook thing. It was, you know, keep calm and wash your hands. And now I've actually added my hand lotion next to the sink in the kitchen. I always had it in the bathroom, but so much hand washing, and you know, my hands will probably be softer after the flu gets done than they has before. Let me see. Okay, and wipe down doorknobs and places that are frequently handled. It makes sense. Unless you are sick, you really don't need to wear a face mask. That's more to control the coughing and sneezing that you would have that you'd spread to the other people at the doctor's office. So leave the face masks for the people who are sick and for the nurses and doctors who are out there to help you. And again, back to the washing of the hands, you know, about 60 seconds. They talk about that being about twice singing the birthday song, you know, do that. run through your grocery list in your mind, whatever it takes. Just, you know, soap up, rinse off, and in my case, add a little lotion. See what the news has. Try not to get, you know, don't get overly upset about it, but just be smart, you know. We've all been sick. Nobody likes being sick, and we don't want any of our friends and relatives to get sick. So, and hopefully next time we'll have something a little happier to talk about on pearls than the ever-present coronavirus. But it'll fade away like all of the other viruses do. We get enough immunity comes up, and they are working on all sorts of things for that and tests, so we'll get through this. Okay, well, now that I've chatted away for a while, I'll let you talk again. You were going to mention something before I broke in on this, so we'll get back to it. Chasing love, excitement, personal responsibility. Oh, talking about the meetings, that there are meetings for people with gambling problems, Gambling Anonymous, and there's also meetings for family members if you have a family member who gambles, because it affects the whole family. It doesn't just affect you.
Right, and sometimes when a gambling problem is discovered, it's pretty big by the time it's discovered, because people are really good at disguising it. And so once that happens and that person starts seeking recovery, the loved ones are kind of stuck with, wow, the aftermath and having been caught off guard. And so it's really important that they have a place that they can go and talk to other people who have gone through what they've gone through, and that they can vent, because they have the right to vent. It's just not always all that helpful to only vent to the gambler, because they're trying to get well. And so the Gamblers Anonymous meetings are really important for the gambler to go to, and those can be accessed by going to gachicago.org. That's a great website. We also do make sure that everybody knows that there's a statewide helpline for all kinds of help for problem gambling. So 1-800-GAMBLER is a statewide helpline that would connect people to counseling, like the counseling that we have, to Gamblers Anonymous, to Gam-Anon, which are those meetings for the loved ones of problem gamblers.
What's your website?
So our website is Nicasa.org, and it talks about all the different programs we have. So our gambling services, we're the only provider of gambling treatment in Lake County, Illinois. We're very, very fortunate to get the support from the state as well as from Lake County government to help us to provide gambling counseling at a number of our different locations. We also offer other addictions counseling, mental health services, family advocacy services. So if there's a family who is in crisis of any kind and they have a child in the home under the age of 18, that at no cost to them they can meet with a family advocacy counselor to talk about what's going on and try to get connected to resources that will help get to the root of whatever that issue is.
Well, that's wonderful, because to know that there's, especially, you know, free of charge or whatever, because you know, stitch in time, really. If something's not quite right, you know, go to somebody you know, and somebody who has, you know, you're not going to be chatting away with the neighbors. You know, a lot of people keep their problems to themselves because, you know, it's private. But I'm sure you have privacy rules and regulations about that. And talking to somebody who knows how to ask the right questions, so you're not threatened by the question. And that you're not alone. You know, everybody thinks I'm the only one who has this problem, but no.
And you know, the funniest thing happened. I opened up a container of, I think it was hummus or yogurt or something, and there was a little thing on there that said it's okay to not be okay. And I don't even know what it was about, but I loved that. And it's so true. You know, life is hard, but there are resources that we have, and we can connect people to resources even if it's something that's beyond what we can do. So we really do urge people to contact us. We also have a program called Teen Court, which is a wonderful program for young adult offenders to really go through a program that helps to get to the source of why did they offend, kind of make reparations for the crime that they committed, and it's a really great program. We have prevention programs, after school programs, so we do a lot, and like I said, we've been in Lake County since 1966. So kind of always adjusting to meet the needs of the community.
What's current. Yeah, because, I mean, sometimes it's hard, especially when you're younger, to realize, well, I'm sorry for that. I said I'm sorry. They say they forgive me. but you maybe need a little bit more than that. You've got to do,
Right.
you know, especially to get it in your mind that, you know, there's consequences, which isn't, all consequences are not retribution.
Right,
You know,
absolutely.
that you'll feel better as an adult if you know how to,
Right.
you know, say, I'm sorry, and this is what I'm going to do to make
Right.
up for it.
Right. And that's really the difference. It's called a restorative justice program versus a punitive justice program. And then talking about the counseling that we do offer for problem gambling. So we do free consultations for any gambler or their loved ones. So if anybody's worried about their gambling or the gambling of somebody they care about, they can call for a free consultation, and we'll usually meet with them within 24 to 48 hours. And that's just a brief appointment to get the lay of the land. What's going on? What are you worried about? What do you want to do about it?
Yeah, and then how would I bring this up with someone?
Right. How do I talk to them about the concerns that I have? And is it gambling? Because gambling is something that you can't really see it, you can't smell it, you can't test for it. So we ask that people, if you have somebody that you're worried about, add could it be gambling to the list of questions that you run through when you're trying to figure out what's going on.
What's going on.
And that's why we start with that free consultation. But if somebody does seem that they have a gambling issue and they want to do something about it, we'll do an evaluation, we'll kind of get more information, and we get started providing group counseling, individual counseling, and family counseling, and everything is confidential. Our gambling services are at no cost to the individual. And so there's really no reason not to call if somebody's concerned about their gambling.
Sooner the better.
Absolutely, right.
And just because you can still have a gambling problem but not have run yourself into debt.
Right.
You know, you don't have to hit rock bottom
right.
to
That's
still
a
be a
concept
problem.
we want to do away with, because we have a lot of people, whether it's alcohol, whether it's drugs, whether it's gambling, like, oh, they have to hit rock bottom. We would rather you don't. You know, we would love to see somebody who just started gambling and starts thinking, well, I'm not sure I'm doing this right. Maybe this isn't so good for me. Maybe I should stop, or maybe I need to do it differently. We would love to meet those people and do kind of really a brief intervention to get them on track. But of course, we have had people who come in and it really is, things have been devastated, and yes, we want them to, and we will work with them. And so talking about some of those things that can go wrong, you mentioned the debt. And so the financial impact of problem gambling is really greater than what you would see with any other addiction. So you can very quickly go through an entire paycheck. You can go through a month's salary.
Yes, go through that faster than you could with other things that you buy.
And as long as you can keep getting money, you can keep playing. So people tend to dip into their savings. Maybe they're taking cash advances on their credit cards. Maybe they are pawning things or getting cash advance loans. Sometimes they're borrowing money from others. And so the financial impact can get really great. It is important that seniors, even if you choose not to gamble, that you're aware of this, because sometimes people will borrow money from seniors that they are acquainted with because they have a gambling problem. And so even if you choose not to gamble, it's important that you know about these things so that you don't inadvertently become, you know, the subject of financial exploitation by somebody who does have a gambling problem.
Yes, because you love that person and you want to help them.
Right.
And maybe you're thinking, well, I don't know, you know, okay, $50 or whatever. But I'm thinking people who need help, they're borrowing $50 from the whole family, and by the time they circuit back to you, and by not asking that question, you're not doing them any real favor.
Right. So why do you need this? You're working full time. Why can't you pay your rent? Why can't you pay your car payment? Right. Right. So those financial problems are really kind of the biggest thing that people notice when there's a gambling problem. But there can be other things, like people missing work or not being as productive at work, and then they have job problems. Relationship problems can really come about. There is a higher rate of divorce in homes where there is a problem gambler.
Well, that makes sense.
There's also a higher rate of domestic violence in homes where there is somebody with a gambling problem.
Because you're stressed out. Your mind's thinking about how am I going to fix this, or how am I going to keep it secret, or
that absolutely. And sometimes the gambler is trying to take the money that's needed for food or to pay bills, and then an assault occurs. But sometimes it's also the gambler being assaulted because the extent of the gambling has come to light, and then they're assaulted.
Yeah, they're so frustrated. The other people are come to the end of their rope.
Right,
you know,
absolutely. Right. And it's unfortunately not uncommon that victims of domestic violence sometimes seek solace by gambling. And so we do see that. And so you can have somebody who's a battered person and they're going into, for example, a video gaming place and sitting on that machine, and it kind of temporarily takes them away. Takes them away from the pain and the frustration and the fear for a while.
Okay.
Right. And so those are just some of the things that can happen. We also have an increased rate of crime amongst problem gamblers. And that is very often due to the financial problems that can come from it. So people become financially desperate. And so about half of problem gamblers actually commit crime, as a result of their gambling. And then we can have co-occurring substance use or mental health problems. And for me, one of the biggest concerns is the high suicide rate amongst gambling disordered people. And so we have about 1 in 5 problem gamblers attempt suicide.
Oh my goodness,
it is shocking.
That's a high
It
number.
really is. It's very distressing. And when you think about it, we talked about that lack of public awareness. So if you are a problem gambler and just over and over you keep playing and you don't know why you keep doing it and you don't know why you keep losing and you're beating yourself up and you're hiding it and you're afraid you're going to get caught at work or that you're going to lose your home. So people become very desperate and they don't even understand there's a reason this is happening to them. And they don't realize that there's help that's available. So they can become very desperate, very isolated, and unfortunately attempt to take their own life.
Yes, and they don't connect the depression with the video gaming, because you occasionally win and you feel good.
Right.
So why would I want to stop something that makes me feel good?
Absolutely, and you've zeroed in on something that's really tricky about gambling, because sometimes you win.
Yeah.
Right. So so it is one of those things. If it was all bad, you would really think, why would anybody keep doing this? And so sometimes people do win, and that's one of the things that makes it hard for somebody who's trying to quit, because sometimes the solution to their problem looks like keep playing. If I just keep playing, I might win that jackpot, and it's going to make everything better.
Yeah.
So that makes it a little bit more complicated than alcohol and drugs, where you don't have that phenomenon.
Yeah, because you don't think, well, if I get drunk again, I'll feel better.
Right. Absolutely.
Whereas the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow kind of thing, that, somebody has to win. Maybe it could be me, which, maybe it could, but not likely.
Right.
It's the owners of the casino who have the biggest houses, I'm thinking. But all right. Well, we're getting to the end of our show. We still have a minute left, but so if you want to mention your website again.
Yes, that is www.nicasa.org. That's NICASA.org.
Okay, that's good. I see here on my notes that 14,000 people in Lake County have gambling problems.
Right. That's a high number.
That is.
And our seniors, as I mentioned, are at increased risk.
Yes.
Part of that is just due to some natural things with aging, loss, medications that they can be on can actually bring about problem gambling. So even though it can be a healthy activity for many people, also a higher risk.
Because it's a social activity, but you have to keep in mind. So, all right. Well, I want everybody to realize that gambling is not all bad, but it's, there's a risk. You have to keep it in perspective, and if it's not the thing for you, well, there's other fun things that you can go out with your friends, like, as all of my friends know, even though they did close my closest Baker Square, there are other ones out there that you can go to and enjoy with your friends, and it doesn't have to be a gambling or alcohol or anything.
That's right.
There's a trip to the movies.
Right.
Okay.
Well, thank you for having me.
Thank you for coming.
Yes, thank you.
All right. And at the end of our show, remember that things get rough, it's going to get better. When you get to the end of your rope, tie that knot and hang on. The best is yet to come. Thank you.